We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410 KERI, and now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. Now, let me run our guest by phone, an old friend of the program, Doug Johnson, commentator and author. Okay, Doug, I'm going to run a question by a thought by you and Clay again, okay? Chris Christie this morning, or actually yesterday, talked about Frank Lautenberg passed away, and rather than just appointing a Republican for the next 18 months or whatever's left on that seat, he's going to have a special election. So
that's because they have so much money in New Jersey.
Well, yeah, right. Well, I think it's a great political move on his part, because what he's doing is he's going to take out his opposition, and his opposition will be running for that Senate seat. And they're going to have the primary 2 weeks before his election. It'll be in October. Looking at this last night and analyzing it, and analyzing some of Chris Christie's moves that he's made recently, I would not be all that surprised to see Chris Christie run as a Democrat. Any thoughts on that, you gentlemen?
Well, first off, my thought is anything ever done for the general public, or is always done for selfish reasons? Number one. And I don't think Christie's going to run as a Democrat, because then he'd be running against Hillary, and Hillary's the choice today.
But I think Christie is more electable. I think he'd be more palatable to the middle of the road Democrat than Hillary would be.
Well, as Doug said earlier, Obama made a commitment to Hillary. Now, he hasn't kept any other commitments, so I don't know if he's going to keep this one.
Mm-hmm. Doug, what do you think? Am I way out there in left field?
I don't know that you're in left field. There are other people who I think probably would tend to agree that. I don't think it's too out in left field, but I'm not sure that Christie would do that. Christie has the advantage being up in the Northeast. The GOP establishment love people like him because they are just like him. They are not conservative. They are very much moderate to left wing, in my view. And so he fits the mold of what they would want. The problem he'll have in the Republican Party is that I believe the push will be on to get Jeb Bush to run and make him the candidate, because Karl Rove believes heavily in Jeb Bush. And let's face it, Karl Rove is pulling a lot of the strings in the party these days. And I think the dream, and I'm not predicting this will definitely happen, but the dream team that is seen by the GOP's establishment for the 2016 election will actually be Jeb Bush with Marco Rubio as vice president, because it's a good, moderate team. Neither one of them are conservative, and I will debate anybody on that with either one of them. But I think that's what they dream of. So Chris Christie's got to find a niche somewhere in one of the two parties. Which party that will be is hard to say. A change of party, I don't know. It's a very interesting concept, Marty, but I'm not sure that he would survive because of the strength of Hillary. The only way would be as if Hillary chose not to run, I think.
Well, I don't think two people from the same state stand a chance, and especially with the name Bush.
Well, I think the Bush name is overdone, but unfortunately the moderates, the GOP establishment don't see that. They think it's time for another Bush. They think people are longing for the good old days, so to speak, and they think Bush is it. What they don't realize is the Bush family are a family of moderates, and while I believe they love America, they're good, patriotic people. George W. Bush kept our country safe for all those years after 9/11, far safer than we are today. And there are many wonderful things we can say about them as public servants. They are not what this country needs. This country needs, frankly, a Reagan Republican, and that means we need to move further to the right and get somebody who's solid. And whether that be somebody, and I'm not saying these people are running, but they could, whether that be somebody like a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul, I don't know, but I think they have a great chance if they decide to run, because I think the American public are getting pretty fed up with what's going on, and as extreme as Obama is, it will push people further to the right and become more receptive to the right, I think. So I think people who are moderates, like Chris Christie, will have a harder time finding a place at the end of the primaries. He may get into the primaries, but getting through those all the way, I'm not sure if he'll make it with either party.
Our guest by phone, Doug Johnson, author of No Tomorrows, author and commentator. You know, Doug, the one thing that kind of bothers me in all this is that none of this is sticking to Obama. I mean, he's like a Teflon president, because you look at his poll numbers, and his poll numbers haven't changed much, even with all this going on with the IRS and Benghazi and the AP story. None of it's sticking. I mean, the American people are blaming people for this, but they're not blaming Obama for it.
Well, that's true. In fact, we even know that such major mainstream media publications as the New York Times are burying these stories on the 15th, 16th, 17th page. They're not reporting it as heavily. You know, those of us who look at the alternative media and see what's going on, we hear more of it, but most Americans get their news from the mainstream media, and they're not as aware of what's going on. And so that's a factor. But I think there's another factor here, and people don't want to say it, but Clay, I'll join the outspoken among us like you, and I'm not putting these words in your mouth. I'm just saying I'm going to be outspoken like you are. And my words to it are, I don't think most Americans are able to attach the president personally to these actions because they have a hard time assigning it to him. They think he comes across through the media as a nice guy, and they think, well, he's okay. It's just this mess in politics. And the other portion of that, I think, is the fact that I think that our political culture is such, and our national culture is such, but especially the political culture in the media and in Washington is such that they're not going to go hard against this president. And the main reason is, besides the fact they embrace his ideology, is because he's the first African-American president, and they're not going to have it anywhere said that they went after the first African-American president. They will not do that. He will get through his presidency. It may affect his legacy a little, but it's really not going to leave much on him. What is going to come of these things at best will be the American people start to wake up, and they will vote a change in Congress in 2014 and 2016, vote a change in the White House and more changes in Congress, and that will then create, once again, a check and balance system in our government that we no longer have and that we need.
The man takes no responsibility, but everything he's done has turned into a disaster. When you look at what he's actually done, how he's trying to take over this country, you look at Common Core, you look at AP, the IRS scandal, the Benghazi situation, his takeover of the banking industry, his taking over of the auto industry, sequester, Obamacare, which is turning out to be a total disaster. And in California, we're seeing where the people in California actually lied about the rating for the Covered California Exchange. All these things are a disaster, and yet he still gets credit for doing good things, and if anything goes bad, he's blamed it on somebody else.
I couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
it's
frustrating.
It's easy to hit the nail on the head when you see where the leadership is.
Yeah. Well, question for you. We've got about 3 minutes left, okay? We've got a little bit of time left, but I want to talk to you about the IRS and free speech. I don't know if you saw the committee yesterday, Doug, but it was amazing. The Democrats on the committee were, as these people whose organizations were targeted were sitting in front of them, some of the Democrats, the senator from Washington and Oregon, were trying to somehow defend and justify what had happened. Can you believe that?
Sadly, I can. And, free speech, Americans' civil rights are under attack. Our free speech, First Amendment is severely under attack. It goes even further because not just in the IRS scandal, we saw it with their going after the Associated Press's records and tapping their phone calls and such, and some of the Fox News people and such they went after, and now it's coming out that one of the Justice Department attorneys, I believe it's in Tennessee, is pushing hard, and they're looking at promoting heavily this whole idea of we can't allow hate speech, and so they're going to start going after people who speak out against radical Islam. It's not going to, they don't want to allow this. And when you add that to the fact that the DOJ just about a week or 10 days ago, released a memo to their staff telling managers that you must support LGBT, basically gay rights, and silence is not acceptable. Silence will be interpreted as disapproval. You must speak out. You must support it. You must let employees know that they work in a safe zone and you support their rights and you're for these things. So if an employee has a conviction, especially those who have religious convictions about these things, they won't be allowed to sit back and quietly just do a good job and go home. They will be required to speak out and say they support these rights, they support these programs. Now, can you imagine, your businessman, can you imagine saying to your employees, you must stand up for something that you disagree with in your religious beliefs?
But don't support Christians, don't support the Tea Party, and don't support human rights.
Exactly, and this is all free speech violations. These are threats against employees, threats against American citizens. So this goes so deep. I believe that what we see with the IRS scandal, the AP scandal, the Benghazi scandal, this is just a small tip of an iceberg that is very deep. And I think when history is written, which will probably be years after we are around in this life, I think when the truth comes out, we will find that this administration goes down as the most corrupt in American history.
I totally agree, Doug. Hey, in the 30 seconds we have left, give us your blog again. Your blog is fantastic. I highly recommend Doug's blog and his books.
The blog is horsesenseblog.com, and they'll get there, and that'll link them to everything else about me and my books and stuff.
Fantastic.
In God we trust will prevail.
Yes, amen.
Absolutely.
And, Doug, we love having you on. We got to have you back on soon, my friend.
I'd love to.
Take care. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.